Please join me in welcoming VentureBeat's CEO, Matt Marshall.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us, Ashok and Hillary.
It is great to be here. Thank you.
So we are going to be talking about the finance industry, right? And this is our first kind of dedicated conversation around finance. We've been dancing around it yesterday. We talked about healthcare. The focus is talking about moving past basic Gen AI, how intelligent agents will reshape this industry. And I know you both have been working on agents and you've been well in your journeys on Gen AI. We've been having this conversation, Ashok, and with you, Hillary, right? At least with your company, about your journey on Gen AI. But now with the excitement around agentic AI, would both of you be able to update us about the biggest opportunities you're seeing here? Actually, we heard this morning from Marin a little bit on Intuit, but can you talk a little bit, maybe briefly note your journeys on Gen AI and how agentic AI is helping expand the opportunities here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. Very excited to be here. Great to see all of you. The agentic experiences that we're building at Intuit are really designed to help customers get their work done for them with their permission. I always emphasize that because that is a key element of making it so that people trust the agentic experiences that they're working with. If they have the ability to understand and see what's happening, give permission, they can execute it. As we're going forward, what we're finding is that more and more customers are expecting us to create those kinds of experiences. As we create them, the adoption rate is really quite remarkable. We're seeing that people come back and use them again and again. And in fact, we're seeing significant customer benefits from it. So you might know that in TurboTax, for instance, we've seen a significant uptake in our agent experiences where customers now can complete their taxes 12% faster than before, with about half of them completing in less than an hour. And so this is the way we're thinking about agents in the financial domain. We're trying to make sure that as we build these, they're robust, they're scalable, and they actually are anchored in reality. And that anchoring in reality comes through the generative AI operating system, which I'll talk about also in a few minutes.
And just, Ashok, you mentioned TurboTax and obviously Intuit. I think most of you are aware, but Credit Karma, you've got MailChimp, you have QuickBooks. I mean, so you've got a number of operations there, just so that everyone's grounded in terms of the products that you're working on. But can you go a level deeper in terms of that specific success you're referring to on TurboTax? How is that agentic actually working? Like, what is the agent? How is it working?
Yeah. So the way the agent works is that it's taking in data streams from a number of different sources. So for TurboTax, it takes data from what we call IPS. This is the Intuit Persistent Service. It's what holds TurboTax data. It takes data from other systems, both real-time data as well as batch data. The real-time data comes in through our event bus. As that data is processed by the agent, it can look across a number of tools and also a number of different approaches to answer the key questions that it needs to answer. And that is where our core capability of reasoning comes in. So within GenOS, it's the Generative AI operating system, we have a capability called Gen Runtime. Gen Runtime is like the CPU of the agent. It actually looks at the incoming data, it reasons on it, and then it takes action, and then that action goes out to the end customer. So that's generally how the data flow works. All of this is built upon a very robust platform that has literally abstracted away the complexities of the underlying technology. Because if you wanted to build something like this on your own without an operating system, what you would find is that each experience that you build is going to be slightly different. You're going to have to build different safeguards, different security risk and fraud preventions and so forth. We've done it once so that hundreds of developers can take advantage of it altogether.
Right. Hillary, you're at Amex. equal scale in terms of what you're doing, been well on your journey. Can you talk a little bit about how agentic has changed your opportunities here with Gen AI?
Yeah. I mean, AI generally has changed everything, right? And changes every single day. Every single day, you see more announcements, more capabilities coming out. And so we've been evolving from 15 years ago, traditional AI, building on that long history that we have with traditional AI and a really solid data layer. Our big data environment's been around for many years. It's been powering this all the way through to now Gen AI and agentic. And we're really, thinking about what's our role in agentic, right? Like, how do we think about ourselves as an organization? And we think about it in a couple of ways. One way is, how do we build agents to power the workflow that we have internally? And also, there's a world of agentic commerce that's emerging, right? And that's super exciting, and we want to make sure that our customers can participate in these great innovations, right? And we want to make sure that our customers are able to use their American Express card and all of the great features that we have, like maybe you want to pay with points, maybe you want to search for offers, right? All of the capabilities that we have. And so similar to what Ashok is saying, what we've been thinking about is, and I love that you're calling it an operating system. I might borrow that if you don't mind.
They coined it. You're going to have to pay him
I
for
know,
that.
right? Talk to me later. And what we built is an enablement layer, starting with Gen AI, traditional Gen AI now, to say, okay, what are all the core capabilities that we want to have? And now we're thinking about how do we expand that enablement layer to make sure that we've got, just as Ashok said, that trust and security has got to be built in from the start. So if you think about agents, and you think about agents operating on our behalf, it's a lot of questions come up. Who is the agent operating as? What access do they have, right? I've heard a lot of people talk about agents as in their current state as maybe like an intern, right? Well, you don't give an intern access to everything, right? Like, you think about who's supervising them, what access do they have, what are they allowed to do, what decisions are they allowed to make, and we've got to think about that in a digital way, right? And so that's a lot of what we've been thinking about is how do we power those agents? What should the agents do? What are the outcomes that we want to achieve? We've evolved our thinking about AI as a spectrum from traditional AI, Gen AI, including agentic, as well as traditional automation. I have a lot of people come in and say, oh, I have an agentic use case. And I said, well, you can use traditional automation for that. Like, what is the actual autonomous action that you need to take here that requires agentic?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I would just want to double click on you real quick, because I did it with Ashok. But can we concretize the specific agent, like to your point about, okay, now if we're talking about what people are and an LLM calling upon tools and autonomously making some decisions. I know you've got corporate travel, you've got the customer service is a big use case, coding. Can you just talk about where your agentic is right now, or if it's still early?
Yeah, even in early stages, we've talked a bit about how we tend to experiment internally before we put anything externally. Our brand is all about trust, safety, and security, right? And so we've got to make sure that anything that we do for our customers is going to live up to our brand promise. It's easier to experiment internally, right? And so one of the, we've been investing so much in AI for software development. Okay, we built a PR agent, pull request, and go off and look at the pull request and tell me, what do I really need to look at here? Is it good to approve or not approve, right? Am I good to merge? And it's a nice, easy way to say, let's look at how do we build the infrastructure. What are the evolving standards and frameworks that we want to use for it? How do we get all of that built into our enablement layer? And also, how do we get something into production quickly? That's one of the biggest lessons that I've had over the past couple of years is in the world of AI, don't wait to do a bake-off between three things, right? Pick one and go with it. And move quickly, because by the time you implement it, 7 more things will be available.
Yeah.
And so if you take the time to do bake-offs between, well, I'll try this framework or that framework, 7 more will come out. Just make a bet.
Yeah, there's a trade-off, and you both have kind of hit on it. You're both being very prudent, and we've heard time and again, enterprise companies, your scale, you have to be really careful, thoughtful, right, around governance. At the same time, as we heard from Andrew Ng yesterday, it's a premium on speed. To your point, you just need to get something out there. Can you talk a little bit about the most important lessons? What would you, for our audience here looking for lessons, what would you both say are the top 1 or 2 initiatives you've worked on to unlock this agentic potential?
So certainly the number one thing is the creation of GenOS, the generative AI operating system. So if you go back a couple of years, when large language models came into fruition, one of the things that was very clear is that there was going to need to be a large number of people working on them. And what we wanted to make sure is that as we're building, we don't build many different approaches in many different ways. That's a recipe for a lot of tech debt. It's a recipe for problems in terms of how teams are actually interacting with the technology, what they're learning. It can create a number of different challenges. And so we made a very deliberate statement, and I really credit our former CTO, Mariana Tessel, for having the vision to do this. She said, we will have a single platform to do this, all generative AI experiences on it. And that was the formulation of GenOS. Now, as we started to develop this, the question is, what are the key architectural components of it? How do you decompose the agent of the future? We knew that was coming, and I can prove that by saying that Gen Runtime was something that we designed from the very beginning to allow for this kind of agentic reasoning, because we knew that the technology was going to evolve that way. So that was one component. We knew that developers would want to be able to interact with a number of different large language models, not just one or the most famous one or the one that just got the hot press on Sunday night. And the third thing is, we wanted to make sure that security, risk, and fraud was built in from the very beginning. We wanted to make sure that as we evolved the system, it would be able to interact with different tools and technologies. And so those became the fundamental building blocks of the approach that we took. All of that is sitting upon a very, very vast and robust data layer that really runs at TurboTax scale. Never seen anything quite like this in my career, where as the traffic comes in during the tax season, it goes up exponentially fast. And I've seen the charts. It's exponentially fast incoming data. And as that's happening, these agents are still interacting with the system. So that was probably the number one thing from a technology perspective. Number two, from a people and process perspective, the question is, so you've got this amazing technology, you've built this operating system, what are people going to do with it? How are you going to actually make sure that you're delivering the most important customer benefit based on this innovation? And so we created a mechanism to allow for people to experiment fast in their own worlds, but then bring that information back so that we could further enhance GenOS. And this gave us a remarkable flywheel. So what we started to see is that people were able to experiment fast, which is great. We were able to put tools, technologies, and experiences out to customers fast. Great. But we were also then able to collate our learnings so that everyone could benefit from it. And this gave us tremendous ability to hold accountability across all of the different experiences that we were creating. And so those were the two things, Matt, that I think were very important in our journey.
Yeah. Hillary, anything to add? I mean,
yeah, we're on a very similar journey, and I feel like we're living parallel lives here. It's fun. So our enablement layer was built with the same premise: is allow for experimentation, allow for fast builds, allow for consistency, and importantly, to allow for a common control plane. We need to make sure that we've got all of the right security guardrails in place, all of the right right other governance controls in place. And so now as we think about agentic, we've got a nice control plane to plug in these additional guardrails that we really do need to have in place. I like to think of the additional guardrails as brains. And you think about you mentioned travel. We have one of the world's largest travel agencies. Another area that's really interesting for agentic is dining. We own Resi, so we've got this great portfolio of amazing restaurants. You think about the opportunity to say, hey, I really want to get a reservation at that hot restaurant. It's really hard to get a reservation for. It's a great use case for an agent, right? Yeah. Just know, like, okay, Matt wants to go to this restaurant on this day, or any time in the month of June or whatever. And now you think about, like, what are the guardrails I need to have in place? How do I make sure that agent isn't booking me a restaurant at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I really wanted dinner? How do I make sure that it's not, that it's actually the correct restaurant?
Can you give us a feel for what some of those guardrails are? You talked, you've been experimenting, kicking the tires really well internally on these apps, using MCP, pushing that to its limits.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things you're looking at, right, beyond MCP and making sure that agentic orchestration is sound?
Yeah, we're really thinking about these brains, right? And so we've got a risk advisory council that includes all the risk stripes from across the company that need to opine on any of our AI use cases, right? Privacy, security, information technology, legal, brand, human resources, right? And you think about all of those, and you think about a brand brain. How do we make sure that the agent is acting within the values of our company? I think about privacy. Is that agent using data in a way that it's allowed to use the data, right?
Are these brains set up as separate agents themselves, or are these just workflows around specific agents?
Yeah, we're thinking about building them as separate agents themselves, and how does, like, each agent now has to consult with the brand agent, and that's where we would say, okay, we've got to make sure that as you go through and say, well, I want to do this agent, okay, the requirement is you have to consult with these 3 brains. Right? Yeah. And that would be the path to production is make sure that architecturally you're consulting with these 3 brains or these 4 brains. That brain's not relevant for this use case.
I want to switch to a topic. I don't know if we've actually prepared this, but it came up a lot of times yesterday, which is why I'm bringing it up. Is you have smaller companies worried, slightly smaller enterprise companies worried about the cost, right? Because they, even if they're significant enterprise companies, but maybe smaller than you guys at scale, right? We're wondering whether the processes are actually have scale enough to actually bring in the cost of the work that's needed, and at the same time having a panel with Jonathan Ross of Grok, Sean Liu from Cerebrus, and Dylan Patel talking about this amazing lack of capacity, right? So all these enterprise companies that are actually searching for more tokens, right? That there's no capacity there. Is that true with you guys? I know you talked about massive amounts of data, Ashok. I don't know about you, Hillary, but can you let us under the hood and tell us what's going on there?
So from the standpoint of capacity, we actually haven't hit an issue with this. I mean, early on, I think there were some companies that were having some issues with it, but this is certainly not one of the top things that I or my team are worrying about. What we are looking at, though, is a remarkable change in the paradigm of large language models. So what we're seeing, and we're all seeing it, you all are seeing it, is that there's an absolute race to the bottom in terms of cost of large language models, number one. Number two, there's a large and remarkable race to the bottom in terms of latency. So latencies used to be long time, now latency is short time. Latency means how long does it take for the model to actually emit an answer. It used to take a long time, now it's very short. The third thing we're seeing is a race to the top in terms of accuracy. So what that means is that large language models are becoming better and better as time goes on. Who does this benefit? It benefits all of us that consume those large language models. And for the ones that are producing them, they're the ones who are being forced to drive the costs and down and the performance up. And so because of that, those that develop applications are going to enjoy the very best. And this is, again, why in GenOS, we didn't say, here's the chosen large language model, let's focus on that one. We actually ended up building it so that any large language model from the outside world, anything that we build on the inside world can be used. And we're seeing that that our own models are now in production and latencies are low. The costs are very, very low, and the accuracy is very high, in many cases comparable or even better than the very best models that are coming from commercial vendors.
Yeah, and that's been our experience as well. I think the one watch area that we have is compute capacity, right? And getting access to GPUs to run the applications that you want to run.
So that is an issue. I mean,
At times, yeah.
You didn't take that, so
Yeah.
Hillary, it is.
Yeah, at times it is. And so that's one that we're working with all of our partners to say, like, how do we get there? The one, when you talk about cost, what we did early on was we integrated all of our Gen AI work into our FinOps processes so that we could see exactly what we're spending per use case and make sure that we're really monitoring that. I think it's been, as Ashok said, it's been a race to the bottom in terms of price, and our costs are actually on the utilization and consumption are going down in many cases, which is fantastic.
But where's that demand coming from, right?
Yeah.
Like, the workloads, because you're looking for the GPUs, but what is it that's forcing that? I guess I'm wondering.
Yeah, so if you think about, there are some of our most intense use cases, especially if you think of the world of credit and fraud, right? Those are some pretty intense areas where processing a huge amount of data, and you really want to take advantage of this new opportunities with Gen AI, but it requires a meaningful amount of compute to do it in bursts, right? And so that's where I would say we're still working through that. The other thing that, on costs that you mentioned is we look a lot at, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And we had some use cases early on where we said, well, this is really cool because we're going to automate something that's really taking up a lot of time. But it was with the lowest cost process that we had. And when you compared that with the cost of the model, we weren't, like, if you were looking purely at a cost savings, which isn't exclusively the way we measure things, it really wasn't worth it, even though on paper, like, well, we'll save this many hours, and this many hours times this cost. Is that really worth it for all the investment we're going to make? We'll learn a lot out of it. There's value in that. But were we really getting the juice? Was the juice worth the squeeze in that case? Maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, so Michael Pfeffer of Stanford was talking about that being a big problem. I don't know if he talked about it too much on stage, but as we continue the conversation off stage, I think this is perfectly publicly consumable. It's very hard for ROI for him to figure out. There's all these things that these agentic and Gen AI solutions are doing for them in the hospital system, but measuring the impact is really difficult. How do you measure time saved by this nurse over here, and so on? Can you talk just briefly on the ROI decisions you've made to measure what you're doing, what's succeeding?
Absolutely, Matt, this is the ultimate question. Number one, you have to be able to measure it. And this is why, going back to GenOS, there's a layer in there, there's a capability in there that actually allows us to instrument and then report back how much cost is going in and also how much return is coming out of it. I review this on a quarterly basis. I review it with our CFO. And we look line by line at every single application of AI at the company, and we say, this is how much it cost, and this is how much benefit is coming out of that. So that's instrumented and it's clear. The second thing that we do is we look at the historical trends. And so there have been times where I have been saying, hang on, the return is going to come, we're still testing. And so the costs were low, but that's because the traffic that was going into that particular AI experience was low. We were experimenting. We were testing with customers. We were trying to understand how the technology could evolve in order to meet the use case. When we saw that and we started to bring traffic in, it started to go up like this, and you could immediately see the customer benefits increasing in terms of the accuracies that they were getting, in terms of the lower latencies, et cetera. But then you could also see that the latency was going down, and the cost per token essentially was going down as well. So this is something that is, again, part and parcel of, I think, a good and robust AI strategy, is that you have to be able to measure it, and you have to do it fundamentally from the very beginning. If you tack it on at the end, it's not going to be as good.
Hillary, I know we've got this wrap up please sign in front of us, but yeah, I want you to get a word in edgewise. Thank you.
Yeah. We've really evolved our thinking about value, right? First and foremost, table stakes is trust, security, accuracy, for our customers. But sometimes it's productivity gains. Sometimes, and maybe you put a number on that, maybe you don't. Sometimes it's cost savings. Sometimes it's our net promoter score goes up, right? We've had this amazing success with our travel counselors and putting Gen AI in the hands of our travel counselors. And if our customers are more satisfied because they're getting better itineraries out and better travel bookings out, that's great for our brand, right? And do you put a number on that?
Yeah.
Right? It's that's great value for our brand and for our company.
Yeah. Hard to do in practice sometimes, but yeah. Thank you guys for summarizing everything. And great conversation. Wish we could go longer. Big round of applause.
Thank you.